Morning. Sunday morning, Dr. Mehler coming at you with some more bad news. It was over the weekend. I went to, I didn't go anywhere. I was right here where I am right now, looking at myself. But I was, there was a History Society of Michigan had their conference on local history. It's really good stuff. There was a presentation on Japanese Americans in Detroit. And they came, first they were on the West Coast, and the Growers Association, the Agricultural Growers Association in California, hated the Japanese because the Japanese had actually established the California fruit industry. They brought their skills over from Japan, and they cleared the swamps, and they just turned California into this gold mine for agriculture. So the Agricultural Growers Association hated them because they wanted it for the white growers, and and they agitated the Roosevelt administration to round these traders up and ship them off to concentration camps. And of course, Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed an infamous executive order, and they were all rounded up and put into concentration camps for the duration of the war. And then after the war, the federal government now has custody of all these people that they have. These are American citizens whose rights have been just totally denied. So so they let them out, and they said, you can go to different places, but you can't go back to California. And so a number of them came to Detroit, and when they came to Detroit, they were told not to associate with other Japanese. Just keep your nose clean and assimilate into the society. And when they got to Detroit, of course, they couldn't even rent any place to live because there was this story of this one woman. She had a Japanese woman. She's clearly Japanese. She has a good job at Ford, and she wanted to buy a house in Dearborn. And so the real estate agent told her, it's this, I guess the 1950s, that well, I can sell you the house, but you're on your own. And she said, well, what do you mean I'm on my own? I have a good job. I'm sure I can pay the mortgage. She said, oh no, that's not what I'm worried about. I'm not concerned about your being able to pay for the house. No, what I mean is that in Dearborn, it's illegal to sell a house to a Japanese, to anyone non-white. And what will happen is if your neighbors throw rocks through your windows or they burn down your house, the police, the mayor, the government is not going to be there to protect you. That's what I mean. You're on your own here in Detroit. So naturally, the Japanese found each other, and they formed societies, ways for them to survive in this extremely hostile environment. It's amazing how toxic the environment was for the newcomers to Detroit. That's blacks from the South. This is a period, during the Depression. Yeah, this enormous exodus from the South. The African Americans realized that they didn't have to take all that shit down there. They could go north. There was plenty of shit to take up north, but it was a whole lot better. It was better. So, but better doesn't mean good. It's still a toxic society of racism, which is what America has always been, a toxic society of racism. I mean, when you look at American history from the perspective of non-whites, it's a brutal history, and it gives you a totally different sense of America. It's not a glorious history. You can be proud if you want, not if you look at the crimes. You focus on the crimes, it's a different story. And that's what brings me to the 1960s. Okay, so that was my weekend. Anyway, so in my 122 class, we're talking about, that's my dog, Bella, and she wants to go on the, okay, hold on. Let me move this away for you. Okay, there you go. There you go. All right. Yeah, she She likes to sit on the couch, and I had a pillow there in our way. So in the 122, we're doing the 1960s, and I wanted to say a few words about the 1960s. You can see how difficult this is because my cat just walked in. I have 2 cats and a dog, and they're all conspiring to keep me from getting any work done. It's what happens when you work from home. Yeah. So the 1960s. I mean, remember, I lived through the 60s. I was born in 1947. I was 13 years old in 1960. And the first, I've already shared with you, duck and cover, just you grow up with that. And then in 1962, Kennedy comes on television in October, and he says, we discovered that the Soviet Union, the sons of bitches, they have secretly built intermediate range ballistic missile bases in Cuba. Now, this is 80 miles off the coast of the United States. Missiles fired from Cuba would arrive over my head in New York in 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes. No, there's nothing we can do. No, you got 5 minutes. That's it. Duck and cover. Do it. We taught you how to deal with this. You got 5 minutes. So in 1962, this is uncomfortable for us. And Kennedy says he's going to quarantine the island. In the meantime, these Russian ships are heading towards Cuba for resupply, and they're being escorted by Russian nuclear submarines with nuclear warheads. It's getting pretty tense. So we've got these U-2 spy planes. One of them, this all takes place between Monday and Friday, right? So we have this U-2 spy plane that got kind of lost, and he's over the Soviet Union. He's not supposed to be over the Soviet Union, and the Soviets scrambled their MiGs to bring this son of a down, and he's contacted by our F-15s. Everybody's nuclear armed. Everybody's got nukes, and they're heading towards each other. And this YouTube guy, he turns his plane around, and he gets the hell out of there. And it's avoiding nuclear confrontation in the air, a violation of Soviets. It would, God knows. The next thing that happens is at the end of the week, is that we're flying low over the island because we want to take really good pictures. And the Soviet commanders on the island who are running the anti-aircraft machinery, the guy said, "Do you have the American plane in your sights?" And he said, "Yeah." So shoot it down, because they thought that why were they flying so low is because they're planning their invasion. They want to get last minute really good pictures for their invasion. So they shot the plane down. This is an act of war now. And Kennedy, the youngest president we've ever had, and new guy, he's surrounded by these military people who are telling him that you got to go in and invade now. We got to hit them. We can't allow them to do this. And he said, and he resisted. He said, no, think about the children. In the meantime, I'm in New York, in a little yeshiva, Jewish parochial school, high school. I lived there. There was 80 kids in the school, in the whole school. And we lived in the building, and we studied in the building, and it was just like a monastery. And looking out the windows Friday afternoon, And I'm wondering if Monday will come, if there'll be a Monday. I wasn't wondering, will I be alive on Monday? You know, the bomb will hit and I'll have 5 minutes to say goodbye, say my prayers. But will there be a Monday? Because if there was a thermonuclear war, it wouldn't just be New York City that would be destroyed. It would be our civilization. What would be left? Would you call that Monday? So it's just that, like, there wouldn't be a Monday. Certainly there wouldn't be a Monday in New York. Anyway, so that was 1962. And I remember that. I remember that vividly, because years later, when I was showing a documentary on the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was this clip that I'll never forget. Down in Louisiana at the U.S. Air Base, Strategic Air Command, these guys who flew our bombers, our B-52 nuclear bombers, they were told, there's no more drills. If the klaxon goes off, that's it. It's the real thing. You're going out. And they're sitting down at breakfast and the klaxon goes off. And you see this guy, because they have cameras everywhere on the base, and you see him, he's running to his plane. Here he is, he's an old man. He's years later, he's narrating. He says, yeah, there I was running from my plane. And he's the pilot of this B-52 bomber. And he's climbing up the ladder. And he's saying that as I was going up, I was realizing that I would have nothing to come back to. Shreveport was gone. My future was gone. My family was gone. I'd never smoke another carton of cigarettes again. I was determined that when we dropped our bombs, we were going to take this plane in. There's no, what was the point of coming home? Coming home to what? We were carrying 20 gigaton bombs, 20 megaton bombs. So over Hiroshima, there was 20 kilotons. There was thousands of tons. These are millions of tons. These things go off like firecrackers all around the world. There's not going to be anything left. I think that's what some of us realized, was that everything could disappear in a catastrophic fraction of a second. It doesn't have to take a long time. And then some of us also became aware that you could already have gone too far. You could already have set in motion the seeds of your own demise without even realizing. So that was 1962, and then what's next? Betty Friedan, the feminine mystique and the rise of feminism, which was a really big thing. I mean, you go just look at any of these old shows and you see the sexism was incredible. My mother told me that my father was abusive, and so a social worker advised her to divorce him. And she said, divorce him. You know, she had already 2 children. She had no job skills. She had no way to make a living. This was a very hostile environment for a woman, a single woman with children. You know, she said it was unthinkable you couldn't do it. So the rise of feminism was important to really opening things up for women, giving them more choices, more freedom. So, and then Martin Luther King, and King's assassination. At the end, it wasn't even Black people anymore. He was talking about the Poor People's Campaign. He was saying, no, never mind Black, white, poor. What we need to do in this country is consider the poor, help the poor. And instead, we have become a country that is vicious to the poor. We are not a generous people. We are the stingiest bastards on the face of the earth. So anyway, there was the Civil Rights Act, this Freedom Summer. Okay, so Kennedy is assassinated, and Lyndon Johnson, then this Lyndon Johnson becomes president. Lyndon Johnson was a Texas Democrat. He was a thoroughly corrupt political hack who had been in the Senate for years. He was the Senate majority leader before he became Kennedy's vice president. Kennedy hated him. Everybody hated him. He was just, he was this good old boy from Texas, segregationist to the core. And now he becomes president. And enormous power. And he's got the president's body right in front of him, and he decides to use that power to pass the Civil Rights Act that would give Black people the right to vote in the South, and force Southern businesses to serve Black people in their restaurants, for God's sakes, and let them go into their bathrooms, drink out of their water fountains. It was unthinkable that a Texas segregationist would do this. And so he was asked by one of the civil rights leaders, look, you've done this incredible thing, but I don't understand why. And he said, I'll explain it to you. When Kennedy died, God made me president. I became president by an act of God, an assassination. I wasn't elected, which meant I didn't owe anyone anything for my elevation to the presidency. I was free at last, free at last. And I had a chance to do something that I knew needed to be done. And I knew that this would destroy the Democratic Party in the South. And this is a time when the South had no Southern state voted for Republicans. The Southern states hated the Republicans because Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, because they hated what the Republicans had done to them, had defeated them in the Civil War. And they hated us for it. All those Michigan people flying Confederate flags. So Lyndon Johnson, the Great Society, I'm telling you, see, the 1960s, I grew up in a time, it's hard for you to even imagine. We had so much money. We're the richest society had ever existed on the face of the earth. Everything was easy. I mean, it was, and the Great Society was, why don't we just use government money to help people get jobs and job training, and and help the families with dependent children, make sure that the children have an opportunity. It's not their fault that they were born into poverty. We should help them, make sure that they get an education. That's what, a society that was devoted to a war on poverty. What strange ideas these are today. Actually coming back now because of the pandemic. Interesting stuff happening. All right, I think I better hold it off there, because I have a feeling this is getting to be a long tape. So I'm gonna sign off. This is Dr. Mehler with more bad news. This is my weekend edition, and have a good week. Bye-bye.